Hello, child of fire. Tonight, I'm not speaking to the world, I'm speaking to the tired heart inside you. If you're hearing these words, it's not by accident. God brought you here because He knows the fire within you has been burning for too long, too hard, until it started to hurt. Don't leave. Stay with me for a moment, and let me tell you a story about a flame that seemed eternal, yet was silently crying for help. A story not just for the warrior called Aries, but for every soul that has forgotten how to rest, how to breathe, how to remember that even fire needs to rest to keep shining. Now, I want you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and listen slowly, because this journey doesn't begin with a battle. It begins with the fire that refuses to rest. Aries, sometimes in the deepest hours of the night when the whole world has fallen asleep, and only the fragile rhythm of your own breath remains. That's when the fire inside you begins to speak. No more noise from the world, no stage lights shining down, only the quiet beat of your heart and the faint sound of a soul yearning just to breathe. You think you're standing strong, but in truth, you're only trying to keep everything from falling apart. You smile, you say you're fine, while deep inside that fire is cracking. Burns not because you want it to, but because you've never dared to stop. From so early on, you were taught to be strong, to act, to move, to prove. You became the one everyone depends on, the one who fixes, who leads, the one who never allows themselves to be weak. But tell me, Aries, has anyone ever asked if the warrior has rested? There are nights you wake up and stare at the dim streetlight on the ceiling, and you wonder, am I living or just surviving? You look around and see everything working because of you, yet somehow you are fading, lost among the very things you built. The fire you once loved has become a burden. Maybe you never realized that sometimes doing nothing is the bravest act of all. Fire was never meant to burn endlessly. It needs moments of stillness to remember its original light. And so do you, not to prove anything, but to return to the soul that's been calling you home. In Buddhist teaching, there is an old saying, the one who can stop in the midst of strong winds is the one who truly understands strength. You are not weaker when you stop. You are awakening. You don't lose energy when you rest. You are learning how to offer yourself compassion. People see your light, Aries, but they don't see the nights you collapse over your work, the tears you swallow, the heart that's so tired it just wants to disappear for a while. They praise your resilience, but they don't know that behind it is a lonely soul, afraid, longing, just to be held without having to be strong. True strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising again gently. Sometimes the light you're looking for doesn't come from burning brighter, but from accepting that your fire needs to rest, to shine again. When you finally look within, you'll see that what you once called weakness is actually the home of your tenderness. And when you allow yourself to stop, you open the door to a new kind of power, one born from understanding, not resistance. And in that quiet moment, after all the noise fades, you begin to hear something miraculous. Not the footsteps of the world, not the sound of you rushing to keep up, but something different, soft, distant, yet profoundly close. A sound small and gentle, but echoing through the deepest parts of your soul. That voice isn't coming from outside. It's rising from your own heart, the place where God has always been waiting. He doesn't call you to scold, nor to remind you out of anger. He whispers softly, like the morning wind brushing against a quiet heart. It's time to stop now, my child. There are things I need to tell you, things the world will never be able to say. And when you fall silent long enough to listen, that sacred conversation begins, a dialogue with no judgment, only the light of awakening, slowly unfolding within your heart. There are moments when the universe doesn't awaken you with thunder. It does so with silence, a silence long enough, deep enough, for the soul to stop and finally hear itself breathe. People often believe that stopping means failure, but in the journey of the soul, stopping is a form of salvation. When you've gone too far, too fast for too long, God doesn't push you to keep going, He pulls you back into the center of the storm, so you can see what you've been running from, yourself. Sometimes He doesn't speak through words. He speaks through exhaustion that has no name, through a dull ache in your shoulder, through restless sleep, or a quiet sigh you thought no one could hear. That's not punishment, that's mercy. You've believed you must always be strong, always shine, always give. But light was never made to burn forever, and the soul was never meant to be in constant tension. There are times when God simply wants you to pause in your journey, not to lose your way, but to hear the whisper He's been sending through your heart. In this modern life, you've grown used to speed. Everything demands faster, sooner, more. You've carried the fire's spirit into places where only a single candle was needed. You push yourself to go further, to do more, to endure more, until even your breath feels heavy, as if every cell in your body is calling for help. God's intervention is rarely loud. He doesn't knock with rage. He comes softly yet unmistakably. One day, when the things that once thrilled you lose their meaning, when laughter feels forced, when you feel empty even in a crowd, that's the moment He touches your shoulder, gently, and says, "That's enough." God doesn't want to see you burn your soul just to prove your strength. He already knows you're strong. But strength isn't about carrying more. True strength is knowing when to set the burden down. Have you ever wondered why we listen so carefully to every voice outside of us, but ignore the voice of our own body, our own spirit? Don't you see? This body, the vessel of your soul, is also a divine messenger. It speaks through pain, through the rhythm of your heartbeat, through sleepless nights, not to frighten you, but to remind you it's time to come home. If you don't listen, your body will speak for God. It will make you stop. It will make you rest. It will make you admit you can't do it all. But if you learn to pause before the body cries out, you'll realize that stopping is its own kind of miracle. In Buddhist wisdom, there's a saying, when the body no longer has strength, it's karma inviting you back into stillness. And stillness, my dear one, is where God has been waiting for you all along. When was the last time you allowed yourself to rest, not to prepare for more, but to simply be, to rest, just to feel, to breathe, to see that life continues even when you're not controlling it, to remember that you are not the center of the universe, but a sacred note in its rhythm. Sometimes the bravest act isn't to stand up, but to sit down, not to move forward, but to stop halfway, place your hand over your heart and whisper, "I've come far enough." And in that stillness, when you finally stop doing, when your mind stops resisting, something extraordinary happens. A sound, small, faint, but unmistakable, rises from deep within. Not the noise of the world, but the voice of your own soul, whispering about another kind of battle, a battle not fought outside, a battle with no visible enemy, a battle you cannot win by force, only by surrender. And that, dear Aries, is where the true journey begins. In this life, there are souls born with eyes that always look forward, always seeing another mountain to climb, another door waiting to be opened. You are one of them. From a young age, you've carried the instinct of a warrior, to never retreat, never fear, never accept defeat. But somewhere along all those victories, amid the cheers and applause the world offered you, your soul began to grow weary. On the outside, everyone believes you're in control. They admire the way you rise after every fall, the way you face each challenge without hesitation. But only you know that behind every battle are wounds that never had time to heal. When night falls and the world sleeps, you are still awake, not to rest, but to prepare for the next fight, not because you have to, but because you no longer know how to live any other way. You fight to prove your strength. You fight so no one will see your fear, so no one will notice you're trembling in the dark. But the greatest enemy has never been out there. It's the part of you you refuse to face, the fragile, trembling heart within. In Buddhist teaching, anger is not evil, but if you let it burn without guidance, it can destroy the very forest you once tended with love. Your strength is the same. It isn't wrong. It only becomes dangerous when you forget to pause and breathe. You've battled your own weakness as if it were an enemy. You've tried to erase fear by doing more, being stronger, but the more you push, the deeper it grows. Because fear cannot be conquered, it can only be embraced. Enlightenment isn't the absence of anger or fear. It's seeing the fire within you and not letting it consume you. You've spent your whole life trying to be the light, but maybe what you need now is to learn how to stand still in the dark without being afraid that the darkness will swallow you. The war inside has no swords, no soldiers, no winners, no losers. It is made of silence, a silence so deep that most people fill it with noise, with work, achievements, distractions, anything to avoid hearing it. But when you find the courage to sit inside that silence, you'll feel something begin to bloom softly, quietly, a small light, a gentle peace, a familiar sense you've forgotten, the feeling of being yourself without having to prove your worth. You don't need to win to find peace. You only need to stop fighting yourself. When you stop blaming yourself for being tired, when you stop demanding perfection, when you stop forcing yourself to be unbreakable, you'll realize something sacred. Life never asked you to be that strong. God didn't create you to be an invincible warrior. He created you to understand your own heart, to know when to move forward and when to rest. And sometimes, in the moment you finally whisper, "I can't anymore," another door opens, a doorway to a new kind of strength, one that begins with surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of love. You're not surrendering to the world. You're surrendering to the truth that you are human, not a god. You are allowed to be tired, allowed to be soft, allowed to breathe. You are allowed to set your sword down, not because you've lost, but because this battle was never meant to draw blood. It was meant to teach compassion. And when that realization settles in, when you stop fighting and simply be, you'll hear something unusual, like the sound of a stream after a storm, gentle, clear, warm. It doesn't come to extinguish your fire, but to soothe the burns of a soul that has burned for too long. Because sometimes, only when you've fought to exhaustion, can God finally guide you to the crossroads. He's been waiting to show you where every collapse is not an ending, but the beginning of a sacred rebirth. Sometimes collapse doesn't arrive with thunder or chaos. It comes quietly, on a morning that looks just like every other. You wake up, look in the mirror, and barely recognize the person staring back. You still go to work, still smile, still walk through the motions, but everything feels hollow, colorless. Nothing makes your heart tremble the way it once did. The things that used to make you happy are now just habits. The victories that once made you glow are now just numbers, obligations. You've been fighting for so long, you've forgotten why you started. Your body is tired, your mind feels heavy, and your soul, it's drifting slowly, quietly away. No one notices because you're still the strong one they all remember. But inside, there's a small crack. And that crack is spreading day by day. God isn't punishing you. He's bringing you back, because only when everything collapses can you see what's left among the ashes, your soul. There are seasons when exhaustion isn't the end, it's a doorway, a passage into a new way of being. You've moved too fast, done too much, loved too hard, and somewhere along the way you forgot to breathe. This collapse hasn't come to destroy you, it's come to heal you. It's forcing you to stop, to listen, to look closely at the wounds you've been pretending don't exist. You are not weak for falling. You are being taught humility, a sacred lesson in what it means to be human. In Buddhist wisdom, it's said, in every breaking there is a seed of awakening. When everything inside you falls apart, the soul can finally see the ground it needs to stand on. Think of winter, cold, long, and silent. Yet beneath that silence, life is being reborn in secret. Without the darkness of winter, how could the light of dawn ever move us so deeply? You must fall, not to lose yourself, but to be born again with a softer heart, with eyes that see the world through gratitude, with hands that can touch others without the fear of being hurt. When you fall, don't rush to rise. Let your face meet the earth. Feel the pulse of Mother Earth beneath you. Know that even then you are being held. For it is there, in the lowest, darkest place, that the light of rebirth begins to glow. You've spent your life running from pain. Now you must walk through it, because only by walking through will you see that pain was never meant to punish you, but to open your heart to what you could never feel before. And somewhere in that darkness you may cry, not because you're weak, but because your soul has finally been freed. Every tear that falls isn't sadness, it's cleansing. Cleansing the dust of pride, of tension, of fear. God sees you and He smiles, because He knows that once you've allowed yourself to fall, you will never live the same way again. You'll rise from that long night with a humble heart, one that knows love, one that accepts. You'll understand that true strength isn't about never falling, but about how you rise with compassion, not with armor. People fear collapse, but no one tells you that it's how the soul learns to fly. No more forcing, no more striving. Just surrender, surrender, so that a greater power can lift you. One day you'll feel the wind moving through your heart, gentle, clear, like the universe whispering a promise. Nothing was ever truly lost. Everything is being reborn in a purer, deeper way. And when you rise again, this time not to prove, not to fight, but simply to live with the softness of someone who has been broken and reborn, you will finally understand what God has been trying to teach all along. Every collapse leads to light if you dare to stay with it long enough. Because once all your defenses have melted, once all your walls have come down, you'll finally see the true cause of your exhaustion. Not the battles, not the people, not fate, but something older, deeper, quieter inside you. An ancient addiction, the addiction to control. It's not failure and it's not fear. But the need to control, that's what's been exhausting you. You haven't noticed it, but for years you've lived like a gatekeeper of your own life. Always alert, always ready, always needing to know what's coming next. You don't call it fear. You call it preparation, strength, responsibility. But deep inside, you've just been trying to protect yourself from being hurt again. When did you start believing that if you didn't hold everything together, you'd lose it all? When did you decide that without control, the world would fall apart? You don't realize it, but in your effort to keep everything within reach, you've been gripping so tightly that life itself no longer has room to flow through you. At first, control made you feel safe. Then it became a chain. You began to manage even the things that were never yours to manage, the feelings of others, the outcomes of the future, the reactions of fate. You wanted everything to move the way you wanted, and when it didn't, it felt like a part of you was slipping away. God sees this. He isn't angry, he simply whispers. You were not born to control everything. You were born to trust the sacred rhythm of the universe. Trust, such a simple word, yet the hardest lesson for a soul made of fire, because to trust is to let go, and letting go feels like falling. No ground beneath you, no guarantees, no map. But in that free fall, that space without control, you finally start to live. Buddhist wisdom says, all suffering begins with the desire to change what cannot be changed. When you stop fighting the current of life, you realize the river was never against you. It was teaching you how to flow. You've spent your whole life swimming upstream, believing that's what strength means. But if you let yourself float, you'll see the river doesn't take you off course. It carries you home. You might ask, if I don't control it, who will take care of my future? The answer is no one, because the future has never needed control, only trust. And when you pause, you'll begin to notice the small miracles around you. A strange breeze brushing your skin, a beam of sunlight landing exactly where you stand, a meeting that feels too perfect to be coincidence. That's how the universe speaks. I'm still here, I've never left you. The moment you stop gripping so hard, you'll feel my hand holding you. But letting go doesn't mean giving up. Letting go means believing that things can still turn out right, without your constant control. It means allowing yourself to rest, to be wrong, to be late, to be imperfect, and still know that life will keep unfolding. Look at nature, it's been teaching you this all along. No flower worries about when to bloom. No wind calculates which way to blow. They surrender to the rhythm of life, and that's what makes them beautiful. One day when you stop trying to arrange everything, your heart will feel lighter. Things will begin to fall into place, not because you forced them, but because you allowed them. Love will come when you stop chasing it. Peace will appear when you stop searching for it. Joy will blossom when you stop trying to create it. God doesn't want to take away your power. He wants you to see that some things don't need control. They find you anyway, in their own timing, in their own way, through the right people. Think of your hands. When you clench them, you can hold on to what's inside, but there's no space for anything new. When you open them, you may lose a few things, but that's when something new can arrive. Letting go is opening your hands to life, to receive, not resist. And then in the moment you truly release, you'll feel something strange, as if someone gently placed a hand on your shoulder, saying nothing, only smiling. All the tension begins to melt, and in its place comes a warm, vast quiet. You're not in control anymore, but you're no longer afraid, because the moment you let go, the miracle begins. A miracle that doesn't roar like thunder, but arrives softly, in the gentle breath of stillness. And in that stillness, you'll hear a familiar whisper, a tender invitation from the universe itself. Rest now, child of fire, for only in stillness can your flame be reborn. Sometimes the most sacred thing a soul can do is not to move forward, but to stop To stop not out of exhaustion, but because you've gone too far away from yourself. You've been running so long that you've forgotten the sound of your own heartbeat, the scent of a peaceful morning, the feeling of taking a deep breath, without needing to achieve anything. On your journey, no one ever taught you how to pause. They taught you how to rise, how to fight, how to succeed, but no one taught you how to sit quietly with your sadness without trying to fix it. No one taught you that letting your tears fall without guilt is also a form of strength, a kind of courage few ever understand. God sees you, still trying to make everything better, still saying, "I'm fine," even as every thread of energy inside you is starting to fray. And out of love, not anger, He sends you this gentle warning, not to frighten you, but to remind you that life does not only exist in motion, but also in the stillness between two breaths. He doesn't ask you to keep carrying, to keep proving, to keep holding everything together. He only says softly, "Sit down, my child, take a breath." At first, when you sit, it feels empty. The silence feels strange because your mind is addicted to noise, to plans, to doing, to fixing. But slowly, something gentle begins to unfold inside that silence. It's the sound of your soul whispering, "You don't have to do anything to be worthy of love." In that moment, you realize how hard you've been on yourself. You've believed that if you stop, everything will fall apart, that the world will collapse if you're not strong enough. But the truth is, the world keeps turning, even when you sit still, breathe, and let go. In Buddhist wisdom, stillness is not emptiness. Stillness is the deepest form of understanding. It's when you no longer need to figure things out, because truth begins to reveal itself. It's when you stop searching, and answers begin to come on their own. When you are still, your energy returns. When you breathe, your soul begins to heal. When you stop, you start to live more fully. People say, take action to change your life. But sometimes, the bravest action you can take is to pause, because only those who dare to stop can hear what the runners miss, the quiet voice of God within. Say the words you've never dared to say. "I'm tired, I need help." They sound simple, but they are sacred. They mark the moment you step out of the armor of your ego and return to the most human part of yourself. When you say them, you're not weaker, you're finally coming home to your own humanity, and only by admitting your exhaustion can you open the door to healing. Maybe as you sit in stillness, tears will fall. Don't stop them. Every tear is a prayer, a message your soul sends to the universe. Each drop carries the weight that's been on your heart for too long, and with every fall, you become lighter. In silence, there's nothing to prove, nothing to force. There is only pure existence, like a leaf dancing in the breeze, like the last light of day touching the water, like a breath moving through your lungs, without anyone commanding it. When you pause, you begin to notice what you've missed. The song of a bird outside your window, the shimmer of light on the table, the scent of old tea still warm in the air. Everything was always sacred. You just hadn't stopped long enough to see it. God doesn't need you to climb another mountain. He just wants you to know that even where you stand now can be the peak of peace. And sometimes a single deep breath is enough to bring you home to yourself. Remember this, you lose nothing when you stop. You're simply learning to live more deeply, more honestly. When you allow yourself to be weak, you become stronger than ever. When you stop, you begin to heal, and then, in that exact moment when you finally release everything, when all the sounds of the world fade, you will feel something miraculous. The fire within you no longer burns to destroy. It begins to change shape. It softens, it glows, it warms, like a sacred candle. Its light will guide you through the night, preparing you for a rebirth far brighter, far deeper, where your flame becomes the light of awakening. The fire within you was never gone. It's only been waiting for your permission to burn again, more gently, more deeply. God never wanted to extinguish your flame. He only wanted you to learn how to let it burn in rhythm, warm enough to comfort, bright enough to guide, steady enough not to harm yourself again. Throughout this journey, you've believed that strength meant being explosive, radiant, unstoppable. But then you discovered true strength doesn't roar. It breathes quietly in the stillness of a flame that knows how to keep itself alive. When you rest, your fire revives. When you love yourself, that light doesn't just shine for you, it spreads across the world, touching other wandering hearts, just like yours once was. You once thought that love meant giving until you were empty, that value only came through sacrifice. But God wants you to understand, real light never needs to be born from pain. When you love yourself deeply enough, love flows naturally, soft as breath, vast as sunlight. Now, after everything you've endured, your fire has changed. It no longer burns to prove, no longer demands to be seen. It is the flame of someone who finally knows who they are, someone who no longer needs to prove their worth, to feel worthy of love, because peace was never out there. It's always been here, in the place where you stop long enough to listen to your own heart. When you begin to love the parts of yourself you once tried to hide, when you welcome both your light and your shadows, when you see even your mistakes as teachers of your soul, you've entered a sacred rebirth. This is the journey of a flame tamed by compassion. No longer the fire of a warrior needing to conquer, but the fire of a guardian, one who understands how fragile life truly is and how every breath of existence is already a miracle. You don't need to be the sun. Even a single candle can light a dark room. Light is never measured by the size of its flame, but by the honesty of the heart that burns it. The strongest soul is not the one that never falls, but the one who dares to live truthfully after the fall. Strength is no longer about fighting, it's about choosing gentleness. It's not about holding on, but bowing your head in gratitude for another chance to love, to live, to burn again. This time with awareness. Let the fire within you become the light of healing. Let it be warmth for the wandering, a reminder that no one needs to be perfect to be loved. Everyone can burn again once they've learned to rest, to release, to trust. And if you're hearing these words right now, let your heart whisper this gentle vow. I choose to rest and let my fire heal. Because this isn't just a sentence, it's a declaration of an awakened soul. When you choose rest, the universe chooses to lift you. When you choose love, whole world changes its color. And then, in the quiet that follows, you'll feel something sacred. The flame is still there. It's always been there. It never died. It's simply been waiting for you to believe in yourself again. Thank you, Aries, for listening until the end. May you find peace in your breath, light in your own fire, and love in the place where you no longer have to prove anything to be worthy. May your fire be gentle, your soul be free, and your path forever peaceful.